Here we go.
Do it.
Okay, cool.
Here we go.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Coffin Talkin', where we unravel the mysteries, embrace the peculiar, and find humor in the unconventional world of funerals and death. I'm Holly. I'm here with Scott. Haha, psyched you out. Frank's also here.
Hi, Scott.
Hey,
How's it going?
it's good. It's great to be here.
It's good to have you here again. Holly, how are you doing?
I'm just fine.
Great. Now, if all the coffiners would just look in the rearview mirror and as they're driving and just smile at themselves, we'll have a great day.
That wasn't scripted. That was 100% pure Frank.
None of this is scripted, Holly.
I know.
Okay.
I want to know how many people are going to actually do it, though.
Yeah.
No, I hope they do. I hope they do. They'll feel better about themselves and have a better day.
We'll see a spike in car crashes on Monday. People not paying attention to the road.
So, Scott, what's new in your life? We haven't talked to you for a while.
I recently moved into a home with a couple of friends, so that was nice. It's a big change,
Yep.
and it's interesting how much you, I guess, take for granted if you're living at home and then you move out and you
Yep.
think, oh man, I need paprika or something else. You know what I mean? So
I know exactly what you mean.
yeah, so it's been really good. It's been a lot of fun so far. And other than that, I don't know if this was, well, I guess I did start working for that accounting office full time. That was the last time I was here. And we are in the thick of tax season, which I think we also mentioned. But yeah.
Good. I'm glad. That keeps you busy, keeps you out of trouble. And,
I don't know about that.
well, you're headed up to a cabin this weekend too, right? I understand.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, we'll go up with a group of friends and
Is it the
probably, what's that?
Is it the same group you go to with or go with all the time, whether it be shooting or camping, hiking?
Yes. And so it's a place up in Pine Top, and we'll probably do a little bit of all of those things. I think we'll go on a hike, and then we'll go shooting one of the days. There's a really nice place for it, pretty close to where the cabin is. So it'll just be a really nice time. Pine Top is very, very beautiful.
It is beautiful. Of course, I've only seen the cemeteries, but yeah, it's pretty. It's pretty. Okay. What about you, Holly?
Nothing as exciting as that. As I was thinking about what to say to recap for my week, literally the only thing I could think of was today at each meal that I ate, I spilled a generous amount of the food on my clothes. So I had to change 3 times today.
What?
I had a
Are you
lot of
shaking?
sauce. No. No, there was no excuse.
I can picture you holding a spoon or fork or whatever, putting it to your mouth, and then with your other hand holding it up under your chin.
Yeah.
Is that what you were doing?
No.
Oh.
No, it was more haphazard than that.
Okay.
So-
Wow. All right. Cool. Great.
So there was that. This next week, I have my sister is coming into town to
Nice.
visit, and I'm super excited about that.
It's not just her.
It's not just her; it's her 2 daughters as well. Girls trip,
Nice.
and she did tell me expressly that the reason that her how old is she? 5-year-old daughter, 6?
Isn't she? I think she's
6-year-old
6.
daughter wanted to come on this trip was because we have Nelson now. We have a cat.
Oh.
So I
she needs
mean,
an-
we'll take her, but that's just a slight blow to the morale.
That's the only reason she wanted to come. They have a cat. I'm going.
We have a cat. We're here. Yep.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
good.
how was your week, Dad?
It's been pretty slow, actually. It's been kind of nice, but you just kind of stay on top of what business you do have and then have to go back and catch up some loose ends on business you've already had. So
Mhm.
it's okay. It's slower than I would like, but it is nice to have that slow period every once in a while.
Yeah, I think in this business, though, you have to learn to appreciate the slow times as well as the times where it's super busy,
I agree.
because then you can just get burned out so fast.
Mm-hmm. And that was happening to me in January. Truthfully, it was very busy, a very busy January.
So this is a good thing.
It is a good thing. So, not something that I would want to be elongated.
Right.
We're now in, it's slower than normal.
Well, great.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, are you going to turn it over to Scott?
I think I'll turn it over to Scott.
All right, Scott. What you got for us today?
All right, so this is Q&A once again. This isn't technically Let's Be Frank. This isn't that, is it?
I don't know. I was just thinking that. That's why I said, well, so long. Because I was trying to figure it out. I don't think it is, right?
I don't think it is.
This
Because
is
it's
phone a
not, no,
funeral.
it's just, yeah.
Oh, okay. I was thinking about it, and I was thinking if we combine the names of
Frank?
Scott and Frank, it would be Let's Be
Oh.
Skrank. And that might not work.
Scott, I don't think you wanted this to happen, but from here on out, this will be Let's Be Frank.
Okay, good.
Let's be Skrank.
Yeah.
That is funny.
Oh boy. Well, we do have a few
man.
questions today.
Great.
So just a couple of them, and usually, I mean, in the ones that in the past that we've done, I've given Frank a heads up and kind of said, okay, it's this, this is the question. But we have not done that this time. There are a few of these, and then there are a few that you might know of, but these will be some off the cuff responses. So the first question submitted by Jamie, and here's the question. She says, if I change my mind, can I move my loved one from one mortuary to another?
Is that the full question?
That is the full question.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, this concludes Let's Be Skrank.
No, let's talk about it for a little bit. Because sometimes people, when they, I think one of the worst things that could happen in the funeral industry is that hospitals, nursing homes, or whatever, they have this select set of mortuaries that they really like to work with. And so if a family doesn't have a mortuary in mind when a person passes away in either of those circumstances, then that nursing home or hospital will call their favored facility. And then most families feel like they're obligated to stay with them. However, they are not obligated. And if the family did not authorize the transfer to be taken to their funeral home, they don't have to pay that fee. And so that's one of those things that families need to be aware of. People should always be aware of that they always have options. And we've taken cases where people have gone into the funeral home that they thought was the one they wanted to use. And then when they get into pricing, they find out, oh my gosh, we can't afford this. And so they automatically, how into you are we? That's the question I always have. How into you are we? Meaning, how much do we owe you now? And will it be worth it to trade and move to another funeral home? But for the most part, when people just need to know and realize that, yes, that is a possibility and it happens quite frequently. So that's a good question. People should know what their options are. Don't feel like just because your loved one's in a facility that they can't be moved, because anything can be changed.
I'm actually curious about this, and I want to ask a follow-up question to that one. When, and I don't know if there is, but when is the latest time that you would think that you cannot switch mortuaries or facilities? how far can you go and then say, you know what, we just want to switch. And maybe another question is, how far have you seen?
Okay, so let's address the first one first. It all depends on how far into the service they have gone. Now, we have a competitor that I probably about 2.5 years ago, the eve of the viewing. In other words, so the funeral home had already set up for a viewing and the service, and then they called me and said, "We're moving our mother to you." I said, "Oh, okay." And so they then called and told me, and the funeral home was so upset, irate. Oh my gosh. And they just berated me up one side and down the other. And I said, "Look, they called me. I didn't call them." And that's what they have to understand. It's a family's choice. And if it's the family's choice, then why wouldn't you be able to do it? I mean, I guess up until the last moment of either putting a casket in a car or actually having people come into the facility or the church to actually have a viewing, that would be probably the latest that you could not make the move, because things are already in motion. Things are happening. With this particular case, when they came to our facility, everything was already set. So all we really had to do was set up the room for the next day to hold the viewing, and then move to the church that they had already designated to hold the services. So it was really nothing much for us to do except provide them a room for their viewing the night before. Now, let me ask you this. What would you think would be the reason they wanted to move?
I would think it would be something along the lines of, because you don't get that far. I feel like something would just have to snap. Maybe they don't like somebody there. Maybe they just have a bad experience. Maybe somebody says, "Oh, well, you can't do that," or something. I have no idea. I don't know why you would get to the day before of a viewing and then decide to move.
Holly?
I would agree with Scott, because I don't think at that point it would be pricing, because I would hope that people are fairly upfront about their pricing.
I'm going to tell you why. This facility, the family wanted to have their loved one cremated the day after the service. And the night before the viewing, they told him that he wouldn't be cremated for 4 days until 4 days after the funeral. And so when he called me, he said, "When could we have him cremated?" I said, "The day after the service." "Perfect. We're moving to you." That was the reason why they moved. And they said that they had made that very clear with the funeral home. The whole time they were there, it was important to have the cremated remains back within a week of their service so that they could go ahead and they were going to go to California and scatter the cremated remains. And so it was important for them to be able to travel and get to California in a timely manner so that they could go ahead and have the services there as well. So that was the reason why they actually moved in that short of notice and in that short of time.
Wow. Okay.
What was the second part of that question, Scott?
I think you did address it. I think it was,
Okay.
what is the latest that you've ever seen somebody switch? Which, I mean, you mentioned the day before the services. Obviously, that is probably.
Well, that's that one. But if I have a body if I have someone in the cooler, an individual in the cooler that's passed away, and I've been in contact with the family for a period of time, and this just not just happened, but probably about 6 months ago, I had held the individual for close to a month when they called and said, "We've decided to move elsewhere." And Holly just dropped her mouth and just went, "What?" Kind of that expression. And that's what I was thinking too when they made that announcement. And so I asked why, and they just wanted to have the individual closer to them when they were cremated. So that was fine. But it does happen, not a lot, but people do need to understand and realize that they can move at any one given moment. There's no reason why you can't. No legal reasons to stay in a facility if you don't want to be there.
In a case like that, though, where you had held the individual for a month,
Yes.
do you charge any holding fee? Like, okay, I've been taking care of your loved one for a month.
Yeah. In this case, usually we only charge $68 a day after 2 weeks.
Okay.
So there was a little bit of a fee. I couldn't in my mind right now tell you what that fee was. It was probably close to $400, which they thought was very fair since we had held them for close to 30 days.
Yeah. Okay. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Mm-hmm.
That actually kind of goes nicely into the next question. Um, I'm reading the question here. It says, should I expect to pay the first mortuary for services rendered? What would that entail? So kind of a follow-up question to that. I thought that was the end of that question, but it actually wasn't. So should I expect to pay the first mortuary for services rendered? What would that entail? Yeah. What other prices would you expect to incur?
Okay, so let's go back and expound just a little bit more on the original question. If you move a loved one to a facility, or if your loved one has been moved to a facility that was not your choice, then I wouldn't, and I would go to my grave saying this: you are not obligated at all to pay them one thing. And the only reason I say that is because that was not your option or your choice to have your loved one taken to a funeral home A when you wanted to use funeral home B, but someone in their mind thought that they would help the mortuary and send your loved one to funeral home A. So I would say that I wouldn't pay them a thing, and most funeral homes would be understanding about that. But I don't know that I would. So a lot of times, if a person goes to a funeral home and they know that there's going to be a service, that funeral home will go ahead and embalm. So if that individual is embalmed at that funeral home, say funeral home A has every right to charge you the embalming fee. Whether you choose to pay that fee or not, I think is up to you. But that's the only time that I could see that, because there's a lot more involved with embalming than there is with just a simple transportation. But if that's the only time that I would say that the funeral homes might be able to charge you something. Now, that being said, this just happened, and it was probably about 9 days ago, where a funeral home decided they had this individual, the loved one of the family. They did the embalming, and then they moved to us, and they wouldn't let us pick up the individual or take the body in, or the individual into our care until that fee was paid. Now, totally illegal, because that's holding an individual hostage. And they don't do that in the funeral industry here in Arizona. You can't do that. You can't hold a body hostage. If the family chooses to move the body or the individual that's passed away, you cannot stop that family from doing that. So the family could, if they did get stopped, they could go ahead into legal recourses. A lot of people don't like to do that. Funeral homes don't like that because it gets messy. Plus, the word of mouth is terrible. So most times they will just go ahead and allow the individual to be released into the care of another funeral home, and then they look at the funeral home that the individual is going to and say, these are our charges. Now, what would you do? If the funeral home, if the business to business was talking to you and saying, these are our charges, what would you do?
I mean, I would say you have no obligation to that funeral home.
Okay.
But also, if they are, I mean, I don't know the legal implications of this, but I'd probably just add that charge to the family's cost and then pay them.
Would you discuss it with the family?
Yes.
Okay, Scott?
Probably something similar. I have no idea what I would do in that
Yeah,
case.
that's exactly what I think Holly was right on. The funeral home can ask all they want. But if the family still disregards, if the family still does not want to pay those fees, then I'm not putting it on my contract. And they may call me and say, hey, we were expecting a check from you for such and such. And I said, family didn't want to pay it. And usually that's the end of the conversation. So,
Scott, don't worry, champ. You'll get there one day.
One day, Scott. Okay.
Yeah, I heard you. I had nothing to say to that. So
Did that answer that question? Did that answer that question?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I had no idea that that was the case, that you could not pay.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't like that, but I'm not. If I make the request and I just leave it like that. If I get a check in the mail, great. If I don't, I'm not. I'm not going to go after them because my time's not worth it.
And I never really considered that it was like illegal and you're technically holding someone hostage. Even though
Yes.
they're deceased, you're holding their body hostage.
Yep. That's exactly the way the law looks at it too.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, and it's the same with cremated remains.
It's the same thing?
Yes, when people are cremated and they come in and, like, for instance, through our facility, we usually get payment once the cremation has been completed and they come in to actually bring into their care the cremated remains. So we cannot hold the cremated remains for payment. You have to be able to release those cremated remains when someone asks for them. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to put my hand on the cremated remains and say, now, how did you want to take care of that today?
Make them a little bit uncomfortable.
Correct. And that's usually what happens, because if they walk out that door, what recourse really do you have? And the same thing with a burial. Once a person's been buried, what's your recourse? You going to dig up the body? You going to exhume them? You going to add water to cremated? No, that's a bad joke.
What?
Add water to cremated remains? What? Oh my gosh, he's animated now. Wow. No, but it's kind of it's an odd animal when it comes to cadavers and cremated remains, and what you can do as far as holding an individual. There's one thing about holding, that's okay, but so long as the family's aware that you're going to hold them. But once they come in, there's really not much more you can do. You have to release them. And there are some funeral homes that try to hold them and hold them ransom for payment before they actually release the cremated remains, which is a no-no.
Wow. So if I called the police and I said my loved one is being held hostage at such and such place, and the police get there and my loved one has already passed away, is it murder? That is what. Can they be charged?
No, Scott.
Dang it.
It is not murder.
All right, well, I guess I'll forego that call then.
Good follow-up, though, Scott. Thanks.
Okay, great. I guess we'll switch gears a little bit. Here's a question from Jimmy. When a husband and wife die at the same time, so this is kind of a hypothetical. I mean, it happens, but hypothetically, they die at the exact same time. What is the marital status recorded on the death certificate?
Good question.
And why don't you tell us what normal statuses are, just so we get an idea of what it could be?
Okay. So when a family comes in and you're actually talking about a person's marital status at the time of death, and that's the key right there, at the time of death, you can ask, were they married, widowed, divorced, never married, or not obtainable, or don't want to offer, don't want to tell. So most of the times you're either married or divorced, or the third one is the widowed. So if a person comes in and it's the ex-wife that comes in to make the arrangements, does she have any real legal standing? No, she does not. And so if the ex-wife comes in and says, yes, we were married, but we were divorced, then of course the deceased is divorced. So now let's go back to the question. When a husband and wife, and this just happened, killed in an auto accident, both husband and wife died, what was the marital status of the wife?
Married.
What was the marital status of the husband?
Married.
Married. That's exactly right. When they both die at the same time and their husband and wife, their status at time of death was married. It's kind of weird, but that's the way it works out. And so And I guess I don't know what the implications would be with insurances when that comes around for life insurance policies, but yeah, you can't say the husband unless one lives through the accident and dies shortly, maybe an hour later. Then the husband that died, for instance, he would then be married. The wife would have been widowed. See how that works?
Yeah.
So, but when they both die simultaneously in the same accident at the same time, they're both married.
That is
Good
very
question.
interesting.
Good question.
It is.
Any
Yeah.
comments on that at all? Okay.
I was just thinking about the tax consequence of that.
Nerd.
He's in that frame of mind, Holly.
I can't win today, can I? I just can't. What was it you said before? You'll get it, champ? Did you call me champ?
Don't worry, champ. Fuck up.
Don't worry, champ.
Uh,
Get it.
Yeah. If you were curious, you would just fill out a 1099-R and the code in the box would be 4 for death. There you have it.
Oh.
Somebody wanted to hear that. I know they did. It can't just be me.
See, Scott, that's why we have you on here asking these questions.
Good.
That's fantastic because it all comes back to taxes.
That's what the people really want to know.
I do
That's
have a
right.
question regarding taxes. Can I take a moment and ask the question?
This is Let's Be Skrank time. So any questions between you two?
That is correct. I don't know if I can answer it.
I have a question. When don't you have to file taxes on someone that's passed away? In other words, if someone lives the majority of 2023 and they die, do you still have to file taxes for 2023?
You actually do.
Okay, what about if someone dies right at the beginning of 2024? Do those taxes still have to be filed?
I would say anything up until the point. You still actually have to do a tax return for them. And there is, now I could be giving misinformation. If you want to Google this after, that might be better than me saying this. But I believe that
Scott,
you.
please don't mention the name of the company you work for.
Oh, yeah, I'm not going to do that.
Okay. All right, go ahead. I'm truly interested. A lot of people have been asking me this question. I don't know how to answer it.
Yeah, I believe you would have to file a tax return for them. And that would happen, I mean, in the next tax season. So if they died at the beginning of 2024, then at the beginning of 2025, you will have to accumulate or gather whatever. And a lot of it will be, did they have any health accounts that they're closing out? Or if they had like a trust, or if they had something where their assets are going to someone, whether that be,
Isn't that handled by a probate though, or a will? I mean, does it actually have tax? I guess it would. I guess it would have tax repercussions. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And oftentimes if they have set up a trust, which I feel like would probably go hand in hand with a will.
Mm-hmm.
You want your trust to secure those, and if it's what are they called? I don't know. Hopefully nobody's listening to this because I can't remember the.
What did you just say, Scott?
I meant hopefully no one that I work with.
Well, thank you for that caveat. Well, hopefully no one's listening to this. I mean that I'm working for.
Oh man. So yeah, if they had a trust, then a lot of the tax you would tax a trust as soon as a person dies, and it depends on the kind of trust. And I'm blanking on the two types of them. But as soon under one type of trust, as soon as a person dies, it is taxed almost as if it were a living entity. And so then that trust kind of takes the place of the person who dies. So.
Wow. Okay.
And I certainly hope I gave you the correct answer there.
Okay. Well, either way, the real thing is to ask a tax advisor, right? Don't just let it slide.
Oh yeah.
Check and see what you need to do for someone that's passed away for the tax, for the taxes. Just make sure that it's taken care of.
It does need to be done. That is correct.
All right. I just thought that if we do an automatic statement of death by the funeral director to the Social Security Department, that would be adequate. Apparently not. Okay.
Not for the IRS, Dad.
Okay.
You'll get there one day, champ.
I was waiting for it.
Okay.
I thought I was thinking to myself, you'll get there one day.
Yeah.
I was thinking it would come from Holly, but not from there. There it was. Okay, good.
All right. Here's the next one.
Okay.
What is the difference between a cemetery and a memorial park?
Okay, so if I said Mesa City Cemetery, and you've been by Mesa City Cemetery, right? What's the main thing that's visible?
I got this one. Headstones.
Yes, upright
Oh,
headstones.
seriously?
Yes,
I was
upright
really
headstones,
joking.
and so that tells you it's a cemetery, right? And usually, cemetery is in the name of the actual facility itself. If it's a memorial park, they're all flat because it looks like a park.
Oh,
Oh.
really? Is
Yeah.
that it?
That's it. That's the main difference between the two. And sometimes you'll have memorial park and cemetery, which means what? Based on the descriptions I just gave you.
Both types of graves are allowed?
Yeah. There's
Headstones and just flat?
both flat headstones and upright markers. Now, cemeteries are interesting because they'll always divide. Like if I went into Mesa City Cemetery now and bought a piece of property or a space, they would say, okay, this space does not allow an upright head marker or headstone. And that's the way they divide it. But yeah, for most places, when they say, like the one place I worked in California was called Memorial Park and Cemetery. And yeah, it is truly beautiful. Probably one of the most beautiful cemeteries I've ever seen, but and Memorial Park. But that's the main difference between the two. Cemeteries will have upright headstones. Memorial parks have flat.
Wow. Okay, very interesting. So going back to the cemetery first, you see some cemeteries that are, I'm assuming that are just completely flat. They just have in the ground kind of graves. But then you have some, and I don't know what these are called, but they're almost like, I don't even know how to. They're almost like mansions, and each
Yeah.
one has graves inside of those that you can stack. So is that?
Yeah.
Do you have to have a certain type of cemetery for that, or is that allowed at any cemetery? I don't.
Those can be put in any cemetery because one, it doesn't qualify as a headstone. Either way, so it's now a building structure. So what you're talking about are crypts.
Oh, okay.
And so a crypt is something that is an above ground burial. Or that's oxymoron, right?
Yeah.
It's an above ground placement of the casket, whether they be cremated remains or a casket, and that's a crypt. And they also have what's called niches, and the niche is specifically designed for an urn. And so in a cemetery, when you go in, you won't see the upright markers and stuff, but you do see these elongated, I call them, well, Lee would call it a longhouse, but that's what they are. And you can look at them and you know exactly what they are because they have nameplates, dates of birth, dates of death on there. And those are crypts.
Aren't those also called mausoleums?
Yes, the crypt is inside of a mausoleum. That's correct.
Oh.
So a mausoleum, just so you know, is an enclosed structure. Crypts you can drive up to and walk right alongside, but if you walk into the facility, that becomes a mausoleum.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I know that from Phantom of the Opera.
And I know the other crypts from Tales of the Crypt. What?
Not from your 40-some-year career.
No, but the one thing that's interesting with the mausoleum is they don't have to be public. A lot of families, if they're very wealthy, will have their own mausoleum where you can actually go in. And you've seen these in movies before where there's a standalone structure with the surname on the back or up above the doorway. Those are private mausoleums. And people still walk in, but they're families. It's a family one, and you just walk in and then pay respects to your family.
I feel like there was also one of those in Phantom of the Opera.
Why, yes, there was. The Daae Mausoleum.
Okay.
The Daiei. What? It's been a while since I've seen Phantom. So, yeah, very interesting on that. What's the other question on that one, Scott?
Yep, the other one. This is kind of comparing two things. That's why I thought it's not directly related to cemeteries. But what is the difference between a coffin and a casket? Have we already asked this one?
We have. Well, I think we talked about it. If you'll look at our logo, Coffin Talkin',
Right.
see, it's that old European style casket, that like a vampire shape. Everyone likens it to the Barnabas Collins casket or the vampire casket. You guys are looking- you guys are
Yeah,
looking at
yeah.
me.
Everyone likens it to that.
So that's a coffin. So it's the old Western style casket. But the casket that you're referring to is the modern style one now. It's either what's called a full couch or a half couch. A full couch meaning that the whole lid will open up so you see the entire body of the individual that's in the casket. But most of them have what's called a leg. What do they call those? Leg cover, and that's also made of metal when the whole lid is opened up. But then the half or the split casket is just the head that allows the individual to be viewed from the hip or the waist up to the top of the head. So, yeah, that's the main difference between casket and coffin in a real fast manner. And again, if you look at the logo, that's why it's called Coffin Talkin'. But you see that coffin, and that's the coffin. And then the the talking is this is you and I. No.
Skranking.
It's cranking. Yes. Oh my gosh, you just made it a verb. Wait, that's cool, a verb. Okay, now just so you know, on the interiors, coffins are very seldom have any type of an interior. They may have a pillow.
And a vampire.
Thanks, Holly. That I was trying not to scare the coffiners.
Oh.
But there you go. Yeah, and there is a wood stake nearby. It's at the feet. No, but coffins, just so you know as well, are a full open. They they aren't split. It's a full solid lid. So the coffin itself is opened up. And once it's opened, you can see the entire individual as well. So the casket is the only one that provides you the ability to either see half the individual, or if you wanted to take the leg cover off and see the entire individual. So it's up to you.
Very cool. Special thanks to Barnabas, Callum?
Collins?
Barnabas Collins.
Collins for providing us the name of the show.
Oh, yes. And
That's
so,
awesome.
hey, listen,
Great.
there is one other thing, too, that is very popular, and that is there's a plexiglass dome that can be put over the top of an individual in a split casket. And the only reason they do that is that the person died of something contagious, like, for instance, tuberculosis, so that no one has an opportunity to actually kiss the individual, hold their hand, nothing like that. But they can still see them in the form of a viewing, but they're secure in the casket and no one can have any access to them. So there is that other option as well when it comes to caskets.
I guess plus, as Holly would remind us, they could more easily see if there is a vampire inside.
That's right.
Okay.
You actually line the plexiglass with garlic.
Garlic. Okay, well, there you have it. I think we got some good questions
Yeah, those were good. Thank you.
answered. Yep, and as always, please send us more. I don't know what the email is.
Let's be frank at coffintalkin.com.
All right, great. Okay, thanks. Yeah, send us your questions. Send us your stories. I think we're about to hear one, but I think that concludes our Let's Be Skrank section.
I like it, actually.
I don't.
I like that too.
I
It's got
don't
a ring
like
to
it.
It's got so sorry. It's there. It's part of the podcast now. Skrank.
Okay, yeah,
you
this
did it
will
to
be my
yourself,
last.
Scott.
Yeah, this is my last episode. So
It's Skrank time.
Oh, it's Skrank time.
It's Skrank time.
Oh my gosh.
All
okay.
right, Holly, let's hear the story.
Yeah, let's jump in. This will be a story submitted by one of our coffiners, and it will be read to get Scott and Frank's take on it. So here it is. He starts out just by saying, your podcast is so interesting and funny too. Frank, I have wanted to share this experience with you that my parents had about 10 years ago. So, my Uncle Phil passed away from an accident on the farm. Sad story, but he had moved from Cedar City to Oklahoma for this amazing farm opportunity. Once he had passed, most of the family was located in Cedar City still and thought it would be easier to transport my uncle to Utah versus all the family and friends traveling to Oklahoma. The family had asked if anybody in the family could help transport my uncle's body back to Utah for the funeral. My mom, Phil's sister, volunteered for the transport. They borrowed a huge Ford Excursion to help in the effort. As far as my uncle was concerned, he had been embalmed, he had a beautiful coffin or casket, and was ready for the trip. My parents had help loading my uncle into the excursion, and everything started out great. They mapped their route, starting their trek down I-40. The first hour of the trip was uneventful. About 2 hours into the trip, my mom heard a knock coming from the casket. She quietly told herself, I didn't hear anything.
No way.
A few minutes later, more knocking. Nope. I didn't hear that, she told herself. It's all in my head. Again, more knocking. She glanced at my dad. My dad was looking straight ahead, focused on the road ahead like he hadn't noticed or heard anything. My mom thought, okay, maybe I'm just imagining it or my mind is playing tricks on me. A few more minutes passed, more knocking. At this point, my dad couldn't pretend anymore that he wasn't hearing it. They looked at each other, and my mom said, you hear it too? There was a little nervousness in his voice. There was no way Uncle Phil was knocking on that coffin, he said. A few miles later, my mom asked, what should we do? To which my dad started outright, well, there's no way we're opening that coffin. That is not an option. More knocking. They look at each other. My dad finally could not take it anymore, and he pulled off the shoulder to think about his options. He was not going to open that coffin. While he was stopped, there was no knocking. They talked to my Uncle Phil, asking if he wanted out. If you want out, give us 3 knocks.
Oh my goodness.
Nothing. Just silence. After sitting for a few minutes and thinking logically about their situation, my dad had a light bulb go off and he said, oh my gosh, there are grooves in the highway. Consistent grooves in the highway contribute to a mundane bouncing of your car. He inspected the coffin and noticed an adjustment screw that he assumed my uncle had most likely been propped up with a board, possibly on a string. He wasn't sure 100%, but he made an adjustment to lower that board, which stopped the uncomfortable knocking for the rest of the trip. They laugh about this trip to this very day. A few months later, Carl, another one of my mom's brothers, passed away. They had traveled to Arizona from New Mexico and had just gone straight to the funeral services. After the services were over, they stopped by my house. As my mom entered, she whispered, we brought Carl with us. To which I said, you have Carl in the car outside? With the mom, you guys have to stop this. Seeing the concerned look on my face, she said, no, not my brother. Carl from New Mexico. To which I said, oh, thank goodness. We can call him Alive Carl. And that is from our coffiner, Ray.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that is funny. Thanks, Ray.
Can you imagine that?
But you know what? You would only think that way if you had someone in the back in a casket.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would.
Otherwise, you think, what? You stay on the road, man.
Right. It wouldn't be worth pulling over. But to the point where they asked them, give us 3 knocks if you want out of here. I don't know what they were going to do if they got the 3 knocks.
Well, at the beginning of the story, he said he was embalmed, right? That embalmer should be fired. Because we're not dead then, the embalming will certainly kill you.
Yeah, definitely. Oh my gosh.
Oh, that is funny. Thanks, Ray. So what do you think, Scott?
In my mind,
Oh,
I think
my.
it says something about this family and how we were raised, but At no point did I ever think there is a logical explanation for this. I thought surely he is knocking. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is going to be awesome. And then he said that, and I thought, okay, I guess that makes sense. But
Yeah, I think that is a testament. I didn't even put that together.
I know.
Weird, but in my head I was thinking, yeah, of course he's knocking. Why would he not be knocking?
Yeah.
Oh man.
So thanks a lot, Craig.
Ray, you made me cry. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
funny. That
man.
is funny. Oh my word. Wow. Okay. Wow. Okay, good. So
Man.
coffiners, you heard that story. They don't all have to be scary.
You're right.
Please submit stories as you think of them or what experiences you may have had. Let's talk and learn about them.
And laugh about him.
Oh yeah, or be horrified by them. So
Yeah.
Oh my word. Okay.
Oh
Anything
my
else, you guys?
On that story, no, I think that covers it. Honestly, that's hilarious. Again, if you have anyone that you think would like to hear this story, like to hear the podcast, share it with them. You can find us on Instagram at Coffin Talkin', send us a DM or send us an email with questions or more stories like this at let's be frank at coffintalkin.com. But we'll see you next
But that's okay because we have a good producer. He's a good editor.
Yeah, he's fine. It'll be great. Don't worry about it.
Okay. All right.